Welcome to Feminist Question Time, brought to you by Women's Declaration International, which is the leading global organisation defending women's sex-based rights against the threats posed by gender identity ideology. We have more information on our website, womensdeclaration.com, where you'll find our declaration on women's sex-based rights, which is 6,500 words long. And it's been signed by 38,067 people from 160 countries, and it's supported by 529 organisations. We have volunteer activists, including country contacts from every continent, and do join us. We have today Florencia from Argentina. She's going to talk about the situation of lesbians in Argentina, and that will be in Spanish. Then we're going to hear from Marion Calder for Women Scotland, who's going to give us an update on Scotland. So we're now going to hear from Florencia, who is an economist, a radical lesbian, participated in several abolitionist heterosexual groups, including Argentina's WDI with Maria Bonetti, and now only interested and focused on lesbian politics. So thank you so much, Florencia, and over to you.
Bueno, en primer lugar voy a hablar sobre datos de cambio de sexo registral
Sorry.
renacer. Sí. Haciendo foco en el impacto que las políticas queer tuvieron y siguen teniendo sobre las lesbianas. Después voy a hablar de algunos casos paradigmáticos y del contexto actual bajo el paradigma del nuevo gobierno, como el caso de Tehuel y la inserción laboral, el lesbicidio de Barracas, el caso de Iggy y el caso de Pepa y Gaitán. Bueno, acá tenemos dos gráficos. En el primer gráfico vemos que los porcentajes de cambio según el sexo elegido. Desde el 2011 hubo 17.826 casos de cambio de sexo, del cual el 55% fueron cambios a mujer, o sea, de hombres a mujeres, el 37% fueron de mujer a varón y un 8% a no binario o X indefinido y todo lo que allí se abarque. Bueno, a partir del 2021 se agregó este nuevo campo dentro del sexo que es X, donde podés poner algo que no pertenezca ni a mujer ni a varón. En el segundo gráfico que hay en la presentación está la cantidad de cambios de sexo que hubo por año, donde se puede notar que por lo menos hasta el 2022 había una tendencia de aumento, si bien hubo algunos años en los cuales bajó un poco. En general había una tendencia de aumento de casos de cambio de sexo en el DNI, para finalmente en el 2023 mostrar una disminución de los casos luego de un aumento muy marcado a partir del 2020. Bueno, acá vemos la composición según sexo y grupo etario. Del total de mujeres que cambiaron de sexo a varón, un 85% se ubica en el grupo de 0 a 29 años. Esto quiere decir que las mujeres adolescentes, mayormente lesbianas, que no se adaptaban a las normas de género, fueron las más presionadas por estas políticas al cambio y a realizarse intervenciones físicas que incluso resultan en mayor cantidad de lo observado, porque muchas no se cambiaron el DNI, aunque sí se hicieron intervenciones. Por otro lado, notamos cómo este fenómeno no se presenta de igual manera con las mujeres que tienen más de 30 años, dado que en ese grupo etario los cambios de sexo representaron solamente un 15%. Respecto de los hombres que cambiaron a mujer, contrario a lo que sucede con las mujeres, hay un gran número de hombres que son más grandes que realizaron el cambio de sexo, concentrándose la mayoría de los cambios de sexo a partir de los 18 años, principalmente entre aquellos que son mayores de 30 años, que es el 48,5%. Esto demuestra por qué la ley de identidad de género es principalmente política sexual contra las lesbianas. Por un lado, las mujeres lesbianas jóvenes que no se adaptan a los requerimientos del género son vistas como algo fallido y terminan buscando identificarse como varones o no binarios. Y como consecuencia tenemos casos como el de Tehuel. Y acá vamos bueno, en el caso de Tehuel es una mujer lesbiana que transicionó y que fue desaparecida por mujer y por lesbiana. pero a quien se contabiliza como varón en los datos oficiales y además cuyo nombre es utilizado por transactivistas para aumentar los casos de víctimas y de esta manera aumentar su argumento de que son el grupo más oprimido, cuando claramente es un caso de lesbicidio. El hecho de no haberse aceptado también como mujer lesbiana la volvió aún más vulnerable para el sistema, que ya de por sí rechaza a las lesbianas y también a las personas autodenominadas trans a la hora de conseguir un trabajo. Bueno, ahora voy a mostrar algunos datos de un censo que hubo que se llama Relevamiento de Diversidad Sexual, eh, que muestran justamente esto, ¿no? Que si bien esta encuesta tiene un, o sea, no es una encuesta a la que podamos confiar mucho porque está sesgada, fue una encuesta que se hizo por autoselección y no representa al total de la población ni muestra toda la realidad, pero bueno, hay algunas cosas que podemos sacar a raíz de esta encuesta, algunas conclusiones. En este gráfico vemos cómo las mujeres lesbianas son las que tienen menor tasa de ocupación en comparación con varones gay, y que las mujeres identificadas como trans masculino tienen menor tasa de ocupación respecto de los hombres identificados como trans femeninos. Es decir, las mujeres en todos los casos en el mercado laboral son discriminadas sin importar cómo se autoidentifiquen. Bueno, acá tenemos una frase que dijo el padre de Tehuel, una foto de Tehuel, donde le decía básicamente que por más de que se autodenomine varón, ella seguía siendo un hombre a la vista de los demás. Y acá voy a mostrar otros datos del mismo censo, eh, donde vemos que, al menos en Argentina, por lo menos mi impresión es que cada vez más mujeres están rechazando la heterosexualidad, pero también aparece el fenómeno de las lesbianas femeninas, que son mucho más aceptadas socialmente, y también el hecho de que la mayoría de las mujeres se autodeterminan bisexuales, se autodenominan bisexuales, porque ser lesbiana sigue siendo un tabú. Las mujeres en su mayoría se consideran bisexuales, no binarias o transmasculinos, y además notamos que lo transmasculino supera en porcentaje a lo transfemenino acá. Por otro lado, vemos que el grupo de hombres que son gays no tienen tanto problema en manifestarlo abiertamente. Y bueno, esto es para mí evidencia de el borrado de las lesbianas mediante las políticas queer de autoidentificación. Ahora voy a hablar de un caso reciente en Argentina, que es el lesbicidio que hubo en Barracas. El domingo 5 de mayo a las 11:30 de la noche, justo Fernando Barrientos arrojó un explosivo casero y prendió fuego a 4 lesbianas con las que convivía en el mismo hotel, provocando un incendio. Tras el ataque, las 4 fueron hospitalizadas. Pamela, Mercedes y Andrea murieron y Sofía sigue en recuperación. Luego del ataque, el asesino se quiso suicidar y actualmente se encuentra detenido en un hospital psiquiátrico. Pamela y Mercedes vivían desde hacía años en la pensión y habían eh, acogido de manera temporal a sus dos amigas Sofía y Andrea. Eh, Algunos testigos cuentan que el homicida les gritaba engendros, tortas, gorda sucia. Bueno, también algunos testigos dicen que ya las había amenazado, que la última vez fue en Navidad y que las amenazó con matarlas. Eh, Muchos contaron que el agresor, luego de haberlas prendido fuego cuando las mujeres lograron salir, las golpeó y las metió de nuevo en las llamas. Pamela Cobas tenía 52 años, falleció horas más tarde del ataque debido a la gravedad de su estado. Era vendedora de golosinas y de cosméticas y en redes sociales se mostraba abiertamente lesbiana. Mercedes Figueroa también tenía 52 años y era la pareja de Pamela y falleció el miércoles siguiente. También ambas vivían de changas. Y el domingo cerca del mediodía, el domingo siguiente al caso, se dio a conocer que murió Andrea Amarante, que estaba internada con su cuerpo quemado en un 75% en el Hospital Pena desde la noche del ataque. Y desde que llegó no hubo familiares ni nadie que se acercara a preguntar por ella o visitarla. La única sobreviviente del ataque es Sofía Castro Riglos, que tiene 50 años y que se está recuperando bien y debería tener el alta en estas semanas. Bueno, acá voy a hacer algunas observaciones sobre lo que estuvo pasando. Eh, bueno, en principio que la manifestación de rechazo a las lesbianas se da desde distintos focos. Por un lado, bajo el paradigma queer tenemos que todas las lesbianas que no se adapten a las normas de género se ven presionadas por políticas que dicen que una mujer no femenina no es una mujer y por lo tanto toda esa lesbofobia se manifiesta a través de transiciones a no binario o transmasculino. Y por el otro lado, con el surgimiento del antiprogresismo y del rechazo a las políticas queer, aparecen nuevamente algunos discursos conservadores en los cuales el odio a las lesbianas es manifestado de forma abierta y donde se acepta la existencia de las lesbianas solamente si éstas se muestran de una forma muy femenina. También asistimos a un negacionismo de la violencia específica contra las lesbianas que se encarna muchas veces en nuestras compañeras feministas heterosexuales. Un problema que surge es la invisibilización de las lesbianas que vivimos por fuera del paradigma queer y entonces resulta que no podemos participar en movilizaciones porque ahí nos encontramos con hombres que dicen ser mujeres y lesbianas que dicen ser hombres. También en muchas de las convocatorias se borró incluso el término lesbiana, utilizando lesbianes o lesbianex para incluir hombres que se autodenominan lesbianas. Una de las consignas que se pudo ver en estas manifestaciones era la cis-heteronorma mata, lo que busca de algún modo quitar responsabilidad a los culpables de estos crímenes que son los hombres. También se englobó estos crímenes dentro de disidencias o identidades lésbicas, borrando la misoginia de la cual surge el odio a las lesbianas, porque nada es más molesto y rebelde que dos mujeres amándose entre sí. Por otro lado, tenemos el discurso imperante legitimado por el nuevo gobierno, que levanta la bandera antiqueer, pero también antimujeres y en el extremo contra las lesbianas. Acá está una cita a un tuit del biógrafo del presidente donde dice que si no queremos que nos maten, que no nos hagamos lesbianas. El mismo hombre, un par de días previo al ataque, dijo que la homosexualidad es una conducta insana y autodestructiva. El gobierno se encargó también a través de su vocero de ignorar el reclamo de un pronunciamiento oficial, negando nuevamente la existencia de la homofobia. Y el mismo presidente se burló de la utilización de la palabra lesbicidio. Bueno, y ahora quiero hablar por qué hablamos de lesbicidio y por qué hablamos de lesbomisoginia. Bueno, hablamos de lesbicidio porque la razón principal por la que fueron asesinadas fue por el rechazo a su lesbiandad. Todas las que somos lesbianas sabemos por experiencia el trato distinto que tenemos respecto al resto de las mujeres. Al caminar por la calle en pareja sentimos la indefensión, miradas obscenas, comentarios. Muchas de nosotras hemos experimentado intentos o incluso la concreción de violaciones correctivas por ser lesbianas. Las lesbianas, además de ser oprimidas por ser mujeres, somos discriminadas y odiadas por amar a otras mujeres. Y esto puede resultar difícil de comprender para muchas de nuestras hermanas heterosexuales porque ellas siguen situadas respecto de nosotras en un lugar que les otorga ciertos privilegios por permanecer en el régimen heterosexual. Eh, con lo cual, cuestionar y desafiar la heterosexualidad impuesta tiene sus costos, no es gratis, y es por esta razón por la que muchas mujeres también se niegan a sí mismas de esta posibilidad. Lo preocupante fue para mí la falta de empatía y acompañamiento que tuvimos las lesbianas cuando esto sucedió y que tenemos en realidad cuando estas cosas suceden. El silencio de las heterofeministas fue total y cuando no lo hubo, solo surgieron cuestionamientos a las lesbianas, a la utilización de la palabra lesbicidio y la negación de la violencia particular que sufrimos, siendo en parte cómplices de los hombres en este trato hacia nosotras al rechazarnos e intentar silenciar constantemente nuestra voz y vivencias particulares en todos los grupos. La lesbomisoginia es esa expresión de odio que existe por el hecho de ser mujeres, pero además por el hecho de negarnos a que los hombres tengan acceso a nuestra sexualidad. En este sentido, me parece imprescindible hacer un llamado a la empatía por parte de nuestras compañeras heterofeministas, dado que las lesbianas siempre apoyamos todas las causas que afecten a las mujeres, aunque no sea una problemática puntual para nosotras como lo es el aborto. Y bueno, me parece que es necesario que nos unamos entre nosotras en contra de quien es el verdadero enemigo. Ahora voy a hablar de dos casos que sirven de ejemplo para demostrar esto. Uno es el caso de I es una mujer que en el año 2016 fue víctima de un ataque en el cual un grupo de hombres intentó violarla por ser lesbiana. Ella se defendió y uno de los atacantes fue herido de muerte. La historia comenzó mucho antes. Ella contó en el juicio, relató que en 1994 un grupo de hombres la rodeó para decirle tortillera, lesbiana, cuando fue a un kiosco a comprar cerveza. En 2002 escapó de un intento de violación en el cual recibió 3 puñaladas en la espalda y quedó hospitalizada. En ese momento ocultó lo que le sucedió cuando habló con su familia y les dijo solamente que le habían querido robar. Cuando regresó del hospital se dio cuenta de que le habían incendiado la casa y tuvo que irse del barrio. Cuando iba a visitar a su familia recibía agresiones, le robaron la bicicleta, la insultaban, la apedreaban. Finalmente, el 16 de octubre de 2016, había ido a visitar a su hermana en Lomas del Mariló. Sufrió un ataque por parte del mismo grupo de hombres que la hostigaban. En el intento de violación grupal correctiva, se defendió, hirió de muerte a uno de ellos y estuvo sin acceso a la justicia, presa durante 8 meses y luego con prisión domiciliaria hasta el día de la absolución en 2022. O sea, estuvo presa desde el 2016 hasta el 2022 por defenderse. Y el último caso, el de Pepa Gaitán, que bueno, esto es para rememorar simplemente que el 7 de marzo en Argentina se celebra el Día de la Visibilidad Lésbica, una fecha destinada a recordar y homenajear la vida de Natalia Pepa Gaitán, que fue asesinada en Córdoba en el 2010 a los 27 años por tener una relación sentimental con una joven que desató la ira de los padres de esta última, culminando en un acto violento donde el padrastro de la joven, Daniel Torres, le disparó a quemarropa con una escopeta. El asesinato tomó difusión por ser lesbiana y activista. Ella se encontraba en pareja con Diana Elizabeth Sánchez, hija de Silvia Suárez, con quien convivía, y según se pudo probar en el caso, el autor del homicidio fue Daniel Esteban Torres. Y no tuvo el juicio terminó ahí sin ningún agravante por esto, por ser lesbiana y por nada, digamos. Bueno, ahí concluye.
We're now going to hear from Marion Calder from For Women Scotland.
So just for a brief, quick overview, for those who may not be aware as to our politics here in Scotland, a year ago, we had a very famous, well, just over a year ago, famous First Minister called Nicola Sturgeon, who unfortunately couldn't kind of identify or answer a question if Isla Bryson, who is a double rapist, who was male, but identified as female, was actually a female. So she was asked and she was asked and she was asked again. And basically she had to resign, which we were very happy about. So then we thought, right, ding, ding, round two, let's have our second First Minister, of which we got one. And then we had the same problem with him. And at this point, we had the Green Party also in Parliament in government rather, with the SNP. And then the same problems kept happening. And we brought hate crime in, which protected kind of men's rights more than female. Female weren't put in this. So questions started getting asked. And then we had the CAS review, of which I know a previous speaker several weeks ago spoke about, of which is the long-awaited report about how we should be actually treating individuals that identify as being the opposite sex. And this caused great consternation towards the Green Party, who are currently in government, because clearly they didn't want this. And then we lost our second First Minister because they had fallen out. So now, just over a year, we're now on our third. And it's not going particularly well. So our new First Minister, whose name is John Swinney, has been in position for just coming up for 2 weeks this coming week. And it's not looking great. And also to add insult to injury, we've also, in the wider UK, have just announced a general election. So now it's even more chaotic than it was before. And still, no one seems to be able to actually figure out what a woman is. 3 years on, 2 First Ministers in Scotland going down, and God knows what the heck we're going to happen with Labour if they come into power, which is also interesting because this is a general election. And for those I don't know, we've also got our own government in Scotland. So we also have our own government too. So we have different aspects of power that the two countries as such will look at. So we could have a Labour Party, perhaps, in England, who seem to be still not particularly certain about what sex actually is and keep coming up with random statements. And then we have our new First Minister, who is doing everything to avoid the subject matter in its entirety. But he won't, because there's other bits of legislation coming forward this year. And if the Green Party still throw their toys out the pram regarding their wishes not being listened to, where it's conversion therapy bill, where they just want everyone to have all the drugs in the world that can allow you to change sex at whatever age, it's not going to go away. So that's our kind of current political place of where we are. So just total chaos. But to be quite frank, this is something we can work with. Because if no one actually understands what's going on, happy days for us. Because quite clearly, everyone has realized this stuff is insanity. And it is not good for political parties, regardless if you're on the left, right, middle, doesn't matter who you are. This is not good for anyone. So, yeah, so that's the kind of where we are. So for those who've been paying attention into the news over the past week or so, you may have heard of an individual called Marudel Madwa. Marudel is a male who is the chief executive of Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre. So yes, you heard it, a man, chief executive of a rape crisis centre. Yeah, this guy is a character. Before he became chief executive of the Rape Crisis Centre in Edinburgh, he was a manager of another rape crisis centre in Scotland. Now, clearly, he's a man, he's just a man, but also identifies as being a woman, because of course he does. So these jobs in Scotland, we have a thing called Schedule 9, where you are allowed to employ just females only, which would be understood because it's a rape crisis centre. And he is purely man, and even though we have the thing called the Gender Recognition Certificate, because this individual is an Indian national, he can't have a GRC. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you're a man, it doesn't matter if you've got a GRC or not. However, there is actually points of law which do allow a GRC to allow basically bits of paper that whether it's a passport or various other things, and how you get married. So your relationship with the state, it doesn't mean relationship with the general public, but your relationship with the state, you could be perceived as, or legally as opposite sex. There's a load of nonsense, but here we go. But he can't actually have one because he's international. Yet he applied for this job, knowing that he's male for all intents and purposes, and they hired him. Now, this was someone that is actually quite renowned as being a trans woman, because he's done a lot of interviews over the past several years. In fact, he actually stood as being a candidate for the SNP as, of course, you'll guess it, a women's officer, because why wouldn't you be? So he is very well known in Scotland for his views. He's done interviews where he has stated that women with views like myself that would be accessing a rape crisis centre would have to reform their trauma. So we'd have to be educated, because clearly our views would be wrong. So instead of possibly addressing the fact that a woman's been raped or has been sexually assaulted, you know, he would actually be concerned about having the wrong views. So if you actually ask for a women-only service, that clearly would be transphobic. So he has been renowned and infamous over the past several years. There's been multiple complaints to Rape Crisis Scotland, which is an umbrella organisation that sits over, and I wouldn't say just manages it, but it kind of is an administrative umbrella that looks after all the separate rape crisis centres in Scotland. And they didn't do anything. This has been raised with professional feminist groups that get money from central government, and they didn't do anything. I mean, they laud this individual. This is more progressive, having this man, you know, being the chief executive of this centre. But thank you for karma. So, and unfortunately, a poor, brave woman that worked at the centre called Ros Adams, who was abominably treated by working at Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre. So she was a therapist dealing with all these women that have trauma. While working there, one of the other members of staff identified as being non-binary. Now, this was a female, so that was identifying as being non-binary, and then chose a male name. So you can see there's going to be a slight problem here. We already have a chief executive that would be an unknown name. Marudal is actually a male Indian name. Murudala would be the feminist one. But however, now we've got a female that's now identifying as non-binary but using a male name. So she asked a quite very clearly obvious question: what would I do? What should I say to women that are using the service to explain that, you know, this is a female, this is a woman, but it's going by a male name? It was very basic. It wasn't coming from any other form of bigotry, as they would say it was. It was just about how would she be able to reassure women that were using the services. So that led to months and months of harassment for poor Ros, intolerable investigation, that just shocking. So eventually she had to leave. She had to go off on long-term sick. She was just absolutely harassed by the organization. It was a witch hunt to her, but she was brave and she took a tribunal case and she won, which was fantastic. And the result of the case came back very, very quickly. The three judges as such that sat and gave their opinion were just slammed Edinburgh Rape Crisis for their handling and their dealing of Ros. So if you want to look at it, the findings of the court case are actually found online. I can possibly send them to Joe, and they can Joe can possibly put the link to it, because reading it is just fabulous. But then you actually, as fabulous as it may be, but then you understand what the heck Ros had to put up with while working there. So that was fantastic as it was. But then we're over a week later, guess who's still employed? Mrudo Wadha. Still there. Now, anyone else with having found that they had just been so horrendous to the employee rather, that there was a culture within the organization, that this man had basically put his views on pretty much every single other person that worked there. And he never gave evidence in the trial at all. So it didn't even rock up. So this was all his mess, but didn't rock up to do with it. And his fingers the control was all from him. He's still in position. And all Edinburgh Rape Crisis have said that they were disappointed. So disappointed, and they will review. And currently they've put in an independent a few months ago. So they obviously realized something was going to go wrong. So they've requested an independent. I'm going to use bunny ears for that, because I really don't think this individual is going to be particularly independent, to review the Edinburgh Rape Crisis service. So it feels in Scotland that we are 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Every time we keep winning these great cases, these get a lot of press. The Mrudo's not been out of the press for the past week, with people kind of concerned and going, what is going on here? I mean, if you were an individual, a normal individual, you would probably have resigned because of the embarrassment of this, or the understanding that you have led this organization to just being in the press every single day, and the downfall, the reputational damage to it. But no, still there. And a lot of the board members have resigned. So it would be up to the board to maybe request his resignation, or maybe sack them, or even put themselves in special measures to understand what is going on within that rape crisis unit. I mean, the findings are extraordinary. They had a hate crime file. So the women that were actually putting in their writing in regarding the concerns, because then, like myself, you know, if a man is a man and you were going to use the pronoun he, but because of these pronouns, this is hateful. So all these kind of complaints or letters of concern were getting marked and put into a hate crime file, of which a member of Edinburgh Rape Crisis also took to the press. So actually took the letters that women were actually stating their concerns and took to the press. They say it was redacted. I doubt it very much, but they said it was. There's still other points that came out were that in Edinburgh, we have, thank God, another rape crisis centre called Byra's Place. And Byra's Place is the one that was funded by our wonderful supporter, J.K. Rowling. You may have heard of her. So just over a year ago, we set up Byra's Place, which is a single sex, run by women for women. That's it. That's what it says in the can. This is what we do. So we actually found out that even Edinburgh Rape Crisis, even with their long waiting list, when we opened Byra's Place, would not signal to Byra's Place. Even though now they're quite entitled to do a mixed sex service if they so wish, as long as it's clear. We are a single sex service. And they refused, they said they would not recommend or signal for women that needed support to go to Byra's Place. It's absolutely astonishing failure. But unfortunately, this kind of signifies what's going on in the violence against women and girls sector here in Scotland. So we have a problem with the Edinburgh Rape Crisis, but we also see this is actually happening across a lot of other services and centres across Scotland, where this ideology has just crept in, and this idea of being progressive must take precedence over actually what women actually need, and being a safe space and having a place for women to actually heal from their trauma. So it's astonishing. But however, I am feeling hopeful that this has actually woken the general public up to actually understanding. This is why we've been shouting about this for year upon year upon year, that the general public going, I have no idea that this was happening. So Operation Let Them Speak continues. So that's kind of the big thing. But then this past week, we've just had some other craziness. I mean, it's just one thing after another. So we've had the Russell Group, which is represents the top universities here in the UK, and it also represents Edinburgh University, which is pretty much totally captured. They came out with a statement in the past few days, basically saying gender critical speech was similar to all manner of things like homophobia, racism, you name it. They were really putting it up there that anyone that has gender critical viewpoints should be kind of framed as those with views on terrorism, for example. So we kind of obviously clearly complained about that, and they went, oh, that was a mistake. It was a total mistake. We meant to say transphobic. I'm going, right, but you were clearly thinking gender critical, and then you just changed it transphobic. That, I'm sorry, what? So they've backpedaled on that and gone, oh no, but clearly that's what they think. So that went through. And then we had the Literary Association Scotland in the past, that story broke yesterday, when they were stating that anyone that realize that sex is a binary, you can't change sex, it must be the TERFs, and they actually use the word TERF. No books from TERFs should be actually put in bookshops, and these women or writers or authors shouldn't be platformed at festivals, book festivals. So they've now backpedaled on that and going, oh, no, sorry. And of course, clearly they knew what they were doing. They just weren't expected to be caught on this. So it's just one thing after another. It may all be a bit crazy in Scotland, but there's some good things happen, and we won't wished. So there you go. And anyway, that's an update from Scotland.